Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the We Can Do This podcast, Kiss the Ground's weekly conversation about how we can participate in the healing of ourselves and our earth as we are one and the same. My name is Rylan Engelhart. I am the co-founder and the executive director of Kiss the Ground, and I'll be your host today. And it brings me great honor to have our guest today, Naima Penniman, who is a multi-dimensional artist. I just want to say good morning and welcome. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, you're so welcome. She is a multi-dimensional artist, activist, healer, grower, educator, committed to planetary health and community resilience. She is the program director at Soulfire Farms, where she supports the next generation of Black, Indigenous, and people of color farmers with land-based education and mobilizing public support for food sovereignty through an on and off farm training programs, speaking and facilitation. She is the co-founder of Wild Seed Community Farm and Healing Village, a Black and Brown-led international community focused on ecological collaboration, transformative justice, and intergenerational responsibility. She is the co-founder and co-artistic director of Climbing Poetry, an internationally acclaimed poet performance duo that uses art as a tool for popular education, community activism, personal transformation. Naima is also a Thai massage practitioner who is a proud member of a collective of Black women identified healers called Harriet's Apothecary, who is devoted to subverting injustice, igniting imagination, cultivating collaborations that elevate and heal our earth, ourselves, our communities, our lineage, and our descendants. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for who you are, everything that you've already done, and everything that you'll continue to do. And thank you for being our guest today.
Oh, it's my honor to be here with you all. Thank you for having me.
And how did you, had you heard of Kiss the Ground? Had we been on your radar previous to us reaching out about doing this podcast?
I was fortunate to meet a member of the organization Kiss the Ground at Occidental Arts and Ecology Center when my sister Leah and I were there on a Farming While Black tour stop as part of the book tour. So that was a formative memory. And I also connected with someone from Kiss the Ground at Pioneers. And I remember being really struck by the name of Kiss the Ground, which is also a line in a poem that I had written. So it really connected. So yeah.
And you know that where we cultivated that name from was from another poem, which you may be familiar with, which is a Rumi poem, which says, "Let the beauty you love be all that you do. There's hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground."
Ashe.
Yeah, and my son's name is Rumi. So
wow.
Poetry and Rumi specifically, his words have really been an ignition of my heart and a real guide in my life and our family's life, and really sourced the creation of Kiss the Ground as a moment of reverence and recognition of how big and magnificent nature is, the earth is, the creation is, and may we, humbly be in service to that creation. And
I absolutely love that.
So another poetry connection. I don't know if this is was around. I haven't been in many years, but there used to be a place on Fairfax in Los Angeles called the Poetry Lounge, which is kind of, when I first came to LA, I kind of grew up there. It was a Tuesday night poetry kind of slam event that was like quintessential to the poetry scene in Los Angeles for, I don't know, probably 15 years. I don't know if you're familiar with that venue or that space. Familiar or no?
No, I'm not familiar. But it
It's
sounds akin to one of our old school quintessential poetry venues in New York, um, where I was first blown away and inspired by the art of live, socially relevant and reverent poetry and its potential, which is where, you know, I first got my feet wet as a performer and really started cultivating my voice.
mm,
That's the New Yorican Poets Cafe in New York.
mm. Yes, I've heard of that. You know a poet out of New York named I'll Be Back?
Yes.
Somehow our paths have crossed over the years, and he told me about the New Yorican. Beautiful. Well, yeah, so the way I created the questions today, I just really, you know, I was, again, we haven't, if we met, it was a very brief moment in crossing, but just looking, listening to your poetry, reading about you online, I just, you know, created based on your interests, your passions, what you stand for, a variety of questions to, you know, open up a powerful dialogue. So thank you for your participation. So yeah, so my first question is just again to really get to know you as an individual and your journey, your path. How has, you know, how did art really transform and shape your journey and have really art being one of the primary modes of activation and transformation and cultivation that you're walking with in this lifetime? How did that develop early in your life?
Yeah. Creativity has always been a close friend, like a companion, and a way for me to channel my energy, my devotion, my emotions, and the things that I most value. So as long as I can remember, I've really felt passionate about what I can create with my hands, with my voice, with my body, in collaboration with nature, and love to always be busy making things. And I think when I'm in that space of creativity, of channeling, is when I feel most a sense of belonging in my own body and in my power, like to be able to make something out of nothing or to transform something out of something else has always been very activating and inspiring to me. And I've also, from very young, have recognized the power of like a message or an emotion or a world that you can create through art. And I grew up being quite shy, so having really strong beliefs about the things that I care about, the world that I wanted to help create, and recognize at a very young age that kind of relationship between the work of social transformation through art, through creativity, like the role that that plays. And it was very crucial in helping me to develop a voice, from going from being a very soft-spoken and more timid person to feeling like, wow, I can really let my voice out to uplift the things that I care about, to make meaning, to share messages. And that's continued to grow throughout my lifetime, you know, and finding poetry as a voice has been very powerful, as a way to help to tell the stories that I've found often missing or mangled in mainstream media, that I feel so important to tell, to help to reframe the way that we see the world, to help create bridges where there weren't once walls, and to also use the visionary muscles of my imagination and others' imagination to really start to dream into something that we haven't seen yet, and for us to be able to create radical transformation that the world is so thirsty for. It requires that visionary muscle to be able to say, like, I feel, I can see, I can sense something beyond what I've experienced, that I'm committed to creating in collaboration with creation.
Beautiful. So, another Rumi poem was rolling off your words, which was love is the bridge between you and me, is another Rumi quote. And it actually brings me to over my lifetime, starting at a young age, I always had this inclination to enter spaces, enter rooms, and see where the biggest relationship gap was between me and the person in the room, and see how I could close that gap, how I could, it's like, it was almost like a game in creating bridges of like, okay, wow, I can see there's an estrangedness, or there's a distance between me and this person. How can I create, how can I close that gap? How can I put salve on the wound between us, or the perception that there's a wound between us? And so, wow, that was really beautifully articulated. And I wonder how, what was one story where you were this kind of shy, a little bit, as you said, reserved, and yet there was an opportunity to step into using your voice, and you crossed that threshold of like, yeah, like you opened your mouth, and you felt that you were the voice that you knew that you were. Is there?
I really thought of a very distinct moment from childhood. I believe it was the 6th grade when I stopped standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance in homeroom, because I didn't feel like I wanted to give my voice to those words, and felt, just that I couldn't pledge allegiance to a flag that I knew stood for such intense militarization across the world, where I was witnessing and becoming more and more aware of the gross disparity of wealth in our country, of the systems of racism that our nation was built on, and in addition, like the irreverence with which like we're treating the natural world as resource for extraction. As I was waking up to this more and more, I said I could not stand up. And so I began to just quietly sit in my homeroom class. And my teacher eventually said, Naima, we all need to participate in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, and said that I had to stand. And I thought, and I was like, no, I will not use my words for this. And I went home and I wrote my own pledge. And it was a pledge to the earth and a pledge to our human community. And I was able to write down some of my values. And so I came into homeroom the next day, and as everybody was saying, I pledge allegiance to the flag, I spoke my own pledge. And I felt in that moment that I was taking back some agency over my voice and what I wanted to commit my words to. And I felt very brave in a way that I hadn't before, to say, like, I will say what I mean and only what I mean.
Wow, I got goosebumps hearing that stand at 6. This was in the 6th grade.
6th grade. Mm-hmm.
And where that was in New York, in upstate New York. Where was that?
I was in Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts.
At that time. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And where were you? Were you learning in school? Were you learning at home? Where were you becoming informed and connected to the injustice, and that what you were speaking to with the Pledge of Allegiance did not align with your values and with the knowingness of what your heart was committed to?
Yeah, my consciousness developed through a number of ways. I mean, definitely being the daughter of Adele Smith Penniman and Keith Penniman was part of that. My parents were both, and continue to be, like, deeply invested in social movements, both anti-racism as well as environmental stewardship. My dad was a war resistor, a conscientious objector to the drafts, and did a lot of anti-racist organizing. And my mother was really deep in the civil rights movement. And so there's no question that being raised by very like engaged parents influenced my worldview. And then also what I was witnessing firsthand through my own experience. I had the opportunity to really see different realities growing up with a Black mother and a white father, and moving between very Black and white worlds, both in the inner city and in very rural areas, and noticing, just through my own eyes, ways that people's experiences could be so different depending on where they were born, how they were raised, the color of their skin. And so as a young person, figuring those things out through observation. And then I became an avid reader around that time. And you could often find me on the weekends, like in a corner of a revolutionary bookstore, just reading as much as I could to inform myself, because I was very aware that what I was learning in the history books wasn't the full history. Like I loved reading the people's history of the United States, and
yes,
and many other books that really influenced me. And I feel like I became more and more outspoken the more that I learned, the more that I had a sense of what my values were, the harder it was to be silent. And so I became more vocal in my classes, making sure like we didn't talk about what the Indigenous perspective was when we went over this whole time period. Can I bring something up? Like so that's where I started to feel more courageous.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. Back to kind of the original question, which was around artistry, and what would you say is what's the feeling that you want to leave people experiencing when witnessing your poetry and the expression of your art?
I aspire to support us, a collective, a room, however big or small. Like I desire for us to feel a rush of aliveness, a deep, palpable sense of connectivity, like beyond ourselves, like both deeply in touch with our like pulsing, beating heart, our aliveness, but that connects us to this vast interdependent web that we are inseparable from. I hope that it expands our like the edges of ourselves, that we can feel more in touch with the people around us, more empathetic with others, including non-human beings. I want my work and hope that my work allows that, true sense of intimacy and homecoming inside of our beings, and also awakens us to our sacred responsibility to take part in healing and transforming the harm that we've inherited in our world. I have no doubt that all of us were born right now for a reason. And that reason is up to us, but it has something to do with helping to bridge from the moment that we're in to the evolution that's calling for. And it really requires all of our participation. And I know that's unique to each one of us, like what gifts we bring, what experiences, what perspectives we have to offer to the shifting that we've been born into. But I know it requires each of our unique gifts. And so regardless of what it is, I just hope it helps to ignite that spark, that fervor of like, yes, I want to show up fully as myself in service to what I believe in. And like, there's no other option like that, there's a quote I love from Jude Jordan of the role of the poet to make the revolution irresistible. And it's part of that, like really that welcoming in, that stirring, that waking up, that rousing, both of like, okay, sometimes the poetry needs to be a wake up call, or the art needs to kind of like help us see something we hadn't seen before, right? I feel like a huge role as an educator through my art, the messaging that I speak to, like real deep, like research and framing goes into it. But then the feeling that I want is not for people to feel weighed down in despair of like, oh my God, the problems are infinite, how will I do anything? But rather like this sense of like ecstatic responsibility, like our ability to respond to this moment, to feel a sense of agency and power to step forward together and helping to heal some of the harms of our world, and to do that with love, and to do that with connection to ourselves and each other.
I mean, I'm just calling out the synchronicity that the what I titled this talk or this episode was creative responsibility, because there were, just listening to some of your talks and some of your poetry online, I really got that was what came through me, and you just articulated that so beautifully. As we're right there in the space of that which you aspire to communicate and share, is there a short little poem that we could drop right into this moment to give people just a few of beautiful words from your heart? I mean, it's all being from your heart, but I just thought it might be a cool opportunity to have a short poem from you.
I'd be honored to, yes. I'll share an excerpt from a longer poem that I co-wrote with my partner in rhyme, Alixa Garcia, called Awakening. And Alixa and I form climbing poetry, so we often braid our words together as our soul sister duo. We are in the wake of a great shifting. Awaken. You better free your mind before they illegalize thought. There's a war going on. The first casualty was truth, and it's inside you. The universe is counting on our belief that faith is more powerful than fear. And in that shifting moment, we'll all remember why we're here. In a world where you're assassinated for having a dream, and the rich spend $9 billion a year to control our ideas, and visions are televised, so things aren't what they seem. We gotta believe in a world where there's room enough for everyone to breathe. We were born right now for a reason. We can be whatever we give ourselves the power to be. And right now we need dream weavers, bridge builders, truth sayers, light bearers, food growers, wound healers, trailblazers, life lovers, peace makers. Give what you most deeply desire to give. Every moment you are choosing to live, or you are waiting. Why would a flower hesitate to open? Now is the only moment. Raindrop, let go. Become the ocean. Possibility is as wide as the space we create to hold. We were born right now for a reason. The reason is up to you. Just think, if so much is controlled by so few, imagine how much so many of us could all do. When you consider this system runs off of our fuel, if we stop running along, we see just who's ruling who. The game don't exist if we don't play by its rules. So don't be scared of the spark in the spell of great darkness, or afraid of the light in the moment of dawning, or the heights you will reach when you rise to your calling and release all your rain, call it flying or falling. Let go of your wanting and give in to your longing, to live free of possession and full of belonging, to the intricate infinites. We're all a part of the web that you wove in a dream you'd forgotten. Was the creator awakening into our conscience, condensation of vapor into a droplet of water.
Wow. Wow, thank you. Oh my God. Total, yeah, the as you described, the expanded nature of being, not knowing where I end and the world begins, or the rest of creation begins. Yeah, I feel completely expanded in my heart, mind, and body. So thank you. That was extraordinary.
Thank you.
Wow.
We're blessed.
Yeah.
By letting yourself reach.
What's that?
I said thank you for fulfilling my own desire and yearning by sharing that and allowing it to help.
Wow. I am so glad I opened that space for that. Thank you so much. Beautiful. So my next question is around activism. Mm-hmm. And, you shared a little bit about, at 6th grade becoming an activist and, saying, and I just want to point out how beautiful the consciousness of that being, you at in your 6th grade, showing up, not just like I'm gonna be defiant and not do this. You actually created the world that you wanted to see, or the declaration that you wanted to see. And I just think, like, it's just so extraordinary that was your inclination in that moment. So yeah, I really want to know how you maintain a heart-centered way of being in the face of so much brutal injustice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love to remember that creativity is the antidote to destruction, literally the opposite of the violence that is so deeply entrenched into how our systems operate, like the level of systemic racism and oppression and extraction that happens. I feel like creativity has a force for keeping me and us like centered and human, and as a force for healing. So that's definitely a helpful part of my practice, and really supported me in going from a place where I was so enraged at blatant injustice that I would see around me all the time. And we have access to not only what we can see literally around us in our communities, which would be enough, but also like what is playing out on so many planes across the world at all times. It's a lot, right? And I feel like I had to move from a stage of just being so enraged and wanting to, just break this broken system, to a place where I've really started to invest and devote my energy in creating the alternative world that I want to see, and trusting that there's already cracks in this empire and it's like destined to fall. And it's not that we don't need to help to push it and make it fall, but what gives me energy in addition to doing like the work of dismantling the oppressive systems that exist is helping to already like dreaming into and building and practicing a new way of being. So spaces like Soul Fire Farm, spaces like Wild Seed Community Farm and Healing Village, and other collectives and communities, intentional communities I've been able to be a part of. It's like, okay, yeah, no, we want to figure out how to grow our own food in a way that is ecologically responsible and helps to steward the soil and heal the climate. And we want to choose who has agency in growing this food, and we want to make sure it gets to the people who need it most. And in the process, we want to be, healing from ancestral trauma and relationship to land. Like doing that, being inside of that is so restoring in the face of immense and unthinkable, oppression that's happening. It's like, okay, the act of, putting the seed in the soil and tending that plant and like making sure that harvest goes to someone who might otherwise have vital fresh food, or the the courageous conversations and the healing circles and restorative justice circles that we have here at Wild Seed, I feel like it's able to support a different way of being in relationship to like accountability and harm. And it's like we're getting to practice that. So that really like helps me to stay in my heart. And I know that it's so important that we stay awake to one another in this time, where there's both like an immense amount of suffering, unnecessary suffering that's happening, and like to stay very sensitized, not have it become normalized, not have it not become numb, like needing to stay human and stay like really seeing each other. And so that's a commitment that I have made. And in order to like stay in my heart and not have my heart break, like every time another person whose life is extinguished by people who we literally pay to protect us, because unfortunately George Floyd is not an anomaly. Like this happens thousands and thousands of times every year for generations, you know, and that the food that we consume, the vast majority of it is grown by people who are not protected, who have traveled from across these so-called borders from their own homelands to do work, you know, that is not valued, like that, who live under oppressive conditions. You know, I'm talking about like our incredible dignified farm workers who, you know, primarily speak Spanish and have come here to grow food, and who are so invisibilized and not protected and abused, and that this is the food that fuels us, you know. And we're talking about a very broken food system that's been built off of slavery that has never been healed, right? We went from slavery to sharecropping to convict leasing to guest worker programs, and it's, I don't want to forget when I'm eating my food that we haven't healed this food system, right? And so, and I could go on and on and on, right? Like we could spend, you know, as much time as we had, like naming the specific injustices and really trying to humanize that, like make stories of it beyond statistics, like each individual person who's involved in that, yes, in that moment of in that experience of harm. And so in order to stay awake to that, to not forget, and in order to not let my heart break, like the antidote for that to me is making sure that I'm investing my life force energy every day into helping to create according to what I believe in. Just like that Pledge of Allegiance where I said, I don't want to say that, but I need to figure out what else to say. It's like, yes, I want to divest from these systems that I feel like are creating so much harm. You know, how can I really, truly, like with it, collaborating with everyone and all the forces around me, like use my breath, use my energy, use my calories, everything that I have towards really helping to build something that I believe in, that I want to get behind. And that gives me hope. Like that gives me hope when I feel that I can participate in that. And when I see more and more people trying to figure out their role, and knowing that ultimately it's like, I feel that we are all yearning for a world in which we all belong, in a world in which we can all breathe, and in a world in which we have a bounty to be able to share amongst ourselves. And so I just have a lot of faith that as we wake up to that, that we're going to get it right, that we're going to say yes to life and say yes in our role in protecting and defending it.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Yeah, you spoke a little bit to this, but I know that you do a lot of specific work around how to heal ancestral, or I mean, I'll ask you to tell me more about what you do, but my understanding is that you participate in workshops and courses that happen on Soulfire Farms, that, and maybe also at where you are today, we're really taking groups through a process of uprooting racism and healing ancestral wounds or atrocities that live within our consciousness. And yes, I'd love to just know a little bit about, as an organization, Kiss the Ground, we've, in this awakening moment of injustice and an awakening of lack of participation from many sectors of society. It feels like there's a big moment for people to see their lack of their participation and a call to real action. And, I hope and pray that there's longevity to this. And as an organization, as someone who runs an organization, I want to be exemplified in not just having this be a thought that, becomes a past, but, how do we engage true action into our organizational fabric to have us see our blind spots of white supremacy, of colonial thinking, mentality, and how do we start to untangle that, and so that we can really live and create in a way that is not creating further bondage or further destruction, consciously or unconsciously. So that was a big question. I mean, it was
I was trying to track it. I feel like it's multi-part, so I'll try to.
Okay, cool. Okay, good.
So first, to speak towards the work of healing ancestral trauma and some of the ways that we're engaged in that, both at Soulfire Farm and at Wild Seed. I'm really grateful to be on the facilitation team and the programming team. I'm this year serving as program director at Soulfire Farm, and we invite thousands of people to the farm every year. This year would be the exception due to the pandemic, but to take part in both week-long immersion programs, which are for aspiring and beginning farmers and growers that are Black, Indigenous, or people of color, to really be able to skill up on regenerative agriculture and some homesteading skills, as well as whole foods cooking, and doing that in a really supportive and celebratory and culturally relevant environment. And
can I just say hallelujah to that? I mean, it's so beautiful. It's just like, it's just so, Naima, how old are you and your sister?
I'm 38. My sister just turned 40.
Wow. I just want to, put my hands out and acknowledge how extraordinary. I already feel into what, at some levels, what you're doing, and it's just so extraordinary. So I'm excited to keep learning, but I just wanted to take a moment and say, wow, it's truly remarkable, and I'm moved. So thank you. Keep continue.
Yeah, I'm moved too. I love these spaces that we're able to create together. It is immensely powerful, and so much healing happens in the course of our time together. Like, as in addition to the very hard skills, like this is like, you come and we do hands on the land for hours a day, and we're learning about intercropping, and we're really learning about the role of African and Indigenous contributions to ecological agriculture, which is really powerful reclamation, because for so many of us in the BIPOC community, we have very deep traumas in our lineages in relationship to land and also in food production, whether the land was stolen from us or we were stolen from the land or forced to work against our will or underpaid. You know, it's not an easy history, and it's not a far away history. It's very like recent. And so to overcome this association of, you know, land being the scene of the crime of like so much harm in our lineages, like to be able to come to a space, to a community farm that is like led and centered around like Black, Indigenous, people of color community, and to be able to uplift our lineage's unique contributions to sustainable and regenerative agriculture is a really powerful reclamation. And so in addition to the skills that we're learning, the classes that we're taking around, you know, creating healthy soil or on organic pest prevention or cooking delicious foods from our cultures. Like in addition to that, we're also creating a lot of space for reflection and integration and ritual. We do ceremony in the middle of the week. We like really invite our ancestors to be with us through this process. And we really pay close attention to the history, both of racism and oppression in the food system, but also our continuous resistance and resilience throughout that as well. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, totally.
I just got a
pop up
saying I was being signed out.
Okay. Nope, you're still, I can still hear you and
I'll
see you.
Keep going.
Okay.
If we get disconnected, I might have to call back in.
Okay.
So I was sharing that we really study the history of both racism and resistance in the food system, which is really powerful. Like we actually have a activity where we, you know, study some really extreme racist events throughout history in the food system, and we burn it in the fire, and we have almost like a funeral for it, and then we create a timeline of our resilience and contributions, like, and we're able to see that and physically add our own like stories, our own family stories to that timeline, and then take it into the future, making action plans for how we really see ourselves creating more sovereignty, like community food sovereignty, and action plans for how we want to step in as growers and contributors to our communities. So it's a really powerful journey, living together on the land for the week. And in addition to those farmer immersions that we do, which we do 5 of those every season, week long. One of them is instructed entirely in Spanish and really centering our Spanish-speaking community. As I mentioned, the majority of the people that grow the food in this country, who unfortunately have very limited pathways to leadership, which we want to change that story. So we do a training that's Spanish first. And we started doing like day-long immersions that are deep dives into specific farming and homesteading practices based on what our community is asking for, like seed keeping, growing mushrooms, soil health, agroforestry, honeybees, pasture-raised poultry are all some of like the topics that we cover in those day-long deep dives. And bringing it back to your initial question around the ancestral healing piece, which I feel like is a through line through this work in relationship to land. We also, here at Wild Seed, which is the land that I'm on right now, we every year do a rites of passage program for Black and Brown youth that is very much about that connection to ancestry. We're inviting them to learn more about the stories of their ancestors. We share that with each other, as well as like really figuring out ways to connect deeper. We make ancestor staffs. We have a shrine. We do a lot of ritual and prayer, and it's really powerful, like summoning the strength of our ancestors. If you really think, I just want to take a moment, like of the love that your mother or your father has for you, and if you can think of, or of your parent, like the love that you have for your child, like that unmatchable love. And then if you're a grandparent, you know that's like double, right? It's like having a child. If we think of our ancestors, like as our great, great, great grandparents, like, but multiplying powerful love. Like, we can remember that's a tangible force that exists around us, whether our ancestors, have passed on to another realm, like that energy of their love and conviction, their foresight for us and what they've been through is like a force that moves like through our lives that we can harness and call on. And so we like to fortify ourselves with that and remember that our ancestors are rooting for us, and that with that we can expect miracles. We call on them, and we know as we do the work to heal ourselves, we're also helping to heal our lineages, that it's not separate. And also really remembering like some of the unthinkable things that our ancestors have lived through can, in times of great despair where we're really faced with some unthinkable odds, to be able to say, no, we can make it through. And we call upon those stories of resilience to know that we're also capable of making it through hardship and passing on something even more beautiful to our descendants, and that's our sacred responsibility that we get to say yes to.
Let's see. My next question is around being a privileged white male, and that I think there's definitely been times in my life where I would say, I'm not racist. I don't have racist tendencies. I don't have racist thoughts. And I think that is often a blind spot for many white people. And I'm just wondering, in your trainings, and I know you mostly work with people of color, Indigenous and Black people, but you also do some workshops around for white people to really come connected to their blind spots and how they may be perpetuating racism without being aware of it.
That's right. Yeah, we do what we call uprooting racism trainings for folks of European descent, for white allies, and organizations that are really looking to, dismantle white supremacy within their organizations, or like working to be better allies. Mm-hmm.
And I think actually we're talking today with, is it you and your sister, with about you guys working with Kiss the Ground.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. So we're gonna complete this and actually move to an opportunity for integration and action. It's great. Beautiful. So yeah, I guess anything you want to say to that question, as far as those that are listening that desire to be better allies. It's actually interesting. One of the beautiful intentions of me coming to live on this piece of land here in Soho called Soho Heart Farms in Fillmore, California, was inspired by Robin Kimmer and braiding sweetgrass. And one of the things that she said around allyship with Indigenous people is create an authentic relationship to the land, was one of her responses or communications around how to becoming a better ally. And so, yeah, I would love to just get your take on, how to become a better ally.
I'm trying to think where to start it. I think it's so important that we're all willing to examine our privilege. Like, I could speak as somebody who has settler privilege, even though I have ancestry indigenous to this nation, I also have ancestry that have like settler privilege, and it's something that I have to really work to see, because it's not, because privilege can be invisible to us. So I think it's really, really important that all of us are very actively interrogating what that means. It's when we live in a system of entrenched structured racism or patriarchy, and all the other isms, it's like it becomes our participation in that whether or not we are like holding bigoted beliefs, like it's not so much about those like personal, those personal behaviors, but really about our benefit and investment, and, which is really like a vote for a system that like supports us having access to what others do not, you know? So I think it's like this active process of interrogating is what it means to be an ally, and really taking cues and leadership from the folks who are most impacted. Like if I wanted to work on anti-Semitism, like you know, who would I ask? It would be Jewish people. Or if I wanted to work on, you know, veterans' rights, I would look to veterans for cues on like how I could be a better ally. And I feel like somehow with racism, we get it confused. Like, you know, of like feeling like, oh, okay, like I see an experience of, you know, people with white privilege feeling like they have the answers, as opposed to listening to the direct like asks and actions of people who are most suppressed by racism. And it's not that we're not saying it, you know, like, and I'm happy to share resources of like Black, Indigenous, people of color led groups with really clear, this is what it looks like to support with around these specific issues, you know, because it looks different for different communities and there's very like tangible needs. So I think that's one thing about allyship. It's like taking the lead and doing what's being asked. And I feel like because we have such a huge gap of wealth and opportunity and the privileges society affords us, it's going to take some radical reorganization. And yes, that needs to happen on a systems level, but I feel like before the government gets it together to figure out reparations, we actually need to get comfortable with the idea of what radical redistribution of wealth, land, and power looks like. And that means that folks who have inherited enormous like privilege that they might feel an entitlement to because like, you know, this came from my granddaddy, but it's like, wait, but that land or that wealth was stolen from labor that has never been repaid, you know, like really reckoning with that. And like, what does it mean to actually let go of some of our inherited privilege that's not our birthright, but really based on like a legacy of extractivism, of like human labor and violence. And so I think true allyship really goes to that deep level of really questioning like, what do I need to give up or give back? And what are the entitlements I need to reckon with, which I think can be a very uncomfortable place, but is a very like necessary place if we're going to address the fact that, you know, by the time a child takes her first breath, like first breath out of the womb, like a Black child is 16 times less wealthy than a white child that takes its first breath. That's nothing to do with like the value of that child, right? It has to do with a system that has been set up to keep some at a disadvantage and some at an advantage, you know? And so I feel like we need to be very actively interrogating that because it affects so much of our ability to, each individual's ability to be like fully expressed human and members of the society that I feel like, sorry, you can cut it off earlier. I'm starting to ramble, but
no,
I feel like we got to do the work. And some of that means giving up privilege.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can see it in a very clear, almost, you know, in materiality of, you know, there's a sum that for there need to be a redistribution, we need to let go of some of what we, you know, there's an absolute, yeah, there's a need for something to be taken away for someone else to gain. And that's uncomfortable when we've become just familiar with that's what I think I should have, or I think I is entitled to, I'm entitled to. Thank you for that. I think we have enough time for, let's see, what time is it? I think we have enough time for 2 more questions, because one, I wanted to, Kiss the Ground really is about regenerative agriculture and restoring a relationship of reciprocity with the earth and with all inhabitants of the earth. And I'd love to just hear your, how did the relationship to land and where did farming come into your understanding and consciousness of part of this whole picture of healing and its essential nature, its essential piece of the equation?
Growing food feels like such a profound collaboration, like direct collaboration with the earth and all the elements, like really getting to be a member of an ecosystem. And of course, I'm talking about small scale regenerative ecological agriculture, not the machine of industrial agriculture, which is much more extractive and disconnected. So I'm speaking to the practices that we've learned from our ancestors of really tending to land to grow food that actually gives back to the soil, that actually helps to capture carbon from the air and bring it back into the ground where it belongs. And that is about creating a bountiful harvest that we can share with one another, right? And all of us as humans share the need to eat daily, right? And so it's, to me, something that is so intimately part of like who we are and having a role in the means of our own survival. I feel like it's something that is very powerful, to be able to take back some agency and bring back a sense of relationship with something that's so crucial to all of our survival. So for that, it feels really important. And because our food system is so broken, so harmful in terms of like both what it does to the earth as a major driver of climate change, of like polluting water, of devastating our soils, and is also so harmful to humans in terms of labor practices that I've already spoken to. I'm like to be able to show that a different way is possible, that we can actually create a bounty of culturally relevant, vital, nutrient dense food that that can both heal the lands and heal our bodies. Is a very tangible way of taking some of that power back to say, yes, we can do something differently. Like, not only can I, protest that I don't like the way the food system looks, but I can actually be participate in showing that another way is possible. And to be able to do that, again, in partnership with the elements, I feel like is a very healing process. I think a lot of us are walking around feeling like a sense of like loss or disconnection because in our modern society, we've been so divorced from this pulsing, beating, vibrant planet that we belong to, right? So it's in some sense like part of our birthright and a homecoming to really feel in touch with the rhythms of the seasons and the cycles, and to be back as like a member of creation, I think is very profound in helping to support our own healing and reconnection to the interdependent web of which we're all part.
And where in your journey of life did that awakening emerge and your participation begin?
For me personally, I really enjoyed as a young person helping to maintain our very small garden that we had at my father's house, and watching the sugar snap peas crawl up the fence and getting to pick them and eat them was really just a a joy to me that I felt like, wow, we grew this and I get to watch it grow. And my sister and I would also love to go foraging for wild things we could eat in the forest. And there was something that felt very empowering about, like, instead of getting something from the store, being able to grow it or find it. So that was the first moment. And then Leah, my sister, got a job at the food project in high school, which was a really amazing opportunity that, like, brought together kids from the city and kids from the country, taught them how to grow food, and then they would use some of that harvest to, like, cook up food for a soup kitchen or provide food for a pantry. And I remember Leah being so lit up by what she was learning and really feeling a sense of, like, wow, like, I can do something meaningful, like a sense of, like, I matter, like I have the power to really, like, do something with my own hands. And that, like, trickled on to me. I was, like, watching, like, oh, okay, like, something went off. And then when we were in college, we worked together as a summer job working at Many Hands Organic Farm in Barre, Massachusetts, with Jack and Julie Rawson, who were incredible mentors that, like, taught us how to grow food. And that was a process in which I really, like, fell in love with having my hands in the soil and being able to do all the things to tend to the plants throughout the growing season. Very, very satisfying. And so, yeah, those are some of the initial points. And of course, it keeps going from there. But that was kind of my introduction to falling in love with the practice. And I just feel so grateful for my sister Leah and her partner Jonah's tireless work to acquire this, marginal piece of mountainside land, rocky clay land, and to cultivate it with so much sweat and labor, to be able to build up the soil, to be able to build habitat for humans, and to create what is now Soulfire 12 years later, a place that is teeming with life and energy, and to be able to, like, come back home to the land and get to participate in helping to share this gift and the skills that we've been learning with community that's really ready and alive to say yes to reclaiming agency in the food system, to growing food, to recognizing its importance for our health and survival. So I'm so honored to be part of what Soulfire has become.
Beautiful. Yeah. Again, I don't know what formats you guys teach and offer courses in, but Esalen aside, even the land that we're cultivating here, I'd love to just plant the seed for hosting some kind of training or course or experience on Soa Heart Farms. So I just feel filled up and alive and inspired by what you're doing, and I'm excited to continue to learn and participate. So thank you. So my last question, we end every podcast with this, is, the podcast is, we can do this, because really that's been the energy and the spirit and the vitality of, yes, after 1,000 no's, there is a yes. And upon that yes, our life depends. And, just so many points in my life, I've just felt, and I heard you describe it earlier, just around this knowingness, this faith that even though there is such a wall, a world of what feels like, unwinnable or overbearing or too much, there's something that tells me that the more beautiful world that our heart knows is possible, is possible, and that we can do this. And so our last question is, how can we do this, Naima?
Every patch of earth, unencumbered by concrete, where soil and atmosphere meet, be a portal to presence, a terrain of remembrance, a vote for survival in an unpromised future. These gardens are blueprints of interdependent destiny, intergenerational memory, saving seeds for food as remedy. My people know what it's like to eat and still be starving. So we turn in hardship into harvest, lawns and schoolyards into gardens, homegrown bounty in our palms. We come from soil and stardust. And so we conjure, giving props to hood magicians who grow provisions for our kitchens. We smuggle spinach into prisons, transform the places that we live in, trade psychosis for symbiosis, and stay focused. Sprout sunflowers that tower on neighborhood blocks, harvest raindrops on rooftops to water our crops, propagate plant medicine for the metropolis, guarding our plots, because our gardens are not for profit or loss. Cross-pollinate the promise, fam, we got this. Take a deep breath, restore calmness. With lemon balm bounty in our palms, sun gold cherry tomatoes in our pockets, sugar snap peas climbing a chain link fence in this oasis of reclamation, we tend havens for justice and sustenance amid glaring disparity. Every seed saved will set us free. In an age of opulence and scarcity, every seed saved will set us free. In a time of intensifying violence and climate calamity, every seed saved will set us free. Hold on tight to the source. We have all that we need.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah, I'm so honored by your presence and your voice and your heart. Just intimately and personally, touching me as an individual, and then, just so grateful for our audience to get to hear your voice and, your wisdom. And I'm really so thrilled to, just continue to be in relationship and in allyship, and see how we can continue to work together. So I just want to say thank you. From the bottom of my heart.
Thanks for taking the time to have this conversation, and much respect to everyone at Kiss the Ground, and so much love and acknowledgement to everyone who's listening, and for your sacred, unique role and contribution to the world that we're creating together. We got this, y'all.
We got this. Yes. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you. Thank you for listening to the We Can Do This podcast. And as I say every week, one way that you could contribute, and we'll put some links to Naima's work and courses in the show notes. But one thing we're always asking for as nonprofit, or as Kiss the Ground as a nonprofit, and that we're always raising money, and we've made this year, we've made our membership as low as $1. You can support our work. So if you are in appreciation and you enjoy the work of Kiss the Ground, we ask for your support, and we're grateful for that. And we're grateful for you and your hearts, and you, as you said, Naima, your unique contribution. So thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to continuing our conversation.